They're bringing in a lot of money that helps their bottom line so they can continue to produce television over in Britain. So,
right. And if you remember back in the 70s, Saturday Night Live, it was a big movie of its time, of its genre, but it was on such a low budget. I think people have forgotten how to be creative, and they were relying so much on technology, like Avatar. Avatar is a very costly movie,
expensive.
But I love it, and I got to talk to the man who invented the Na'vi language. You know, he was just an out-of-the-box thinker, a wonderful thinker. So, and if you ever get a chance, I'm forgetting his name now. He gave my daughter a Blu-ray and wrote Na'vi on it. It was really cool. But we got a chance to talk to him. But, you know, he's an example of someone that thinks outside the box. That he even has a group of people that meet every year. It's in Northern California in some forest, redwood forest. And they all speak Na'vi. They all speak Na'vi. It's the coolest thing. That may not be too far from where you're at, or it's doable. You know, bring your
redwood,
tent and put
Yeah.
Just,
the forest is up in Central California. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but I think about stuff like that. Pardon?
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just going to mute myself real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay. He's a caller that called in last night. I really enjoyed him, and he was a sincere caller. You know, just someone from that young generation that's trying to make a buck, and he's intelligent. And, you know, it kind of concerns me, all these people that do program and do all this stuff with the internet. I think they may be without a job, or they're going to find it very difficult to compete.
They will. You know, I don't think the internet's going to disappear. I think what this is a, you know, if we go back many years to the economic theorists of the post Jimmy Carter era. So you're going into Ronald Reagan. And
I remember.
There was a concept they use the term laissez-faire, which is sort of like hands-off. It's don't regulate. Get rid of regulation.
Don't rock the boat.
No, don't even touch the boat. Let the boat go wherever the boat wants to go. So, for instance, we used to have a regulated airline business in the 60s. If you ever watched the movie Airport, it's a very old film, but that was at a time when everything you did on an airplane was regulated by the Federal Aviation Administration. Every single thing, from the fuel in the tanks to the food and how much food they gave you and when they fed you and God knows what. And they said, and they did this to protect you, because those rules were set up when the airline business was new and nobody knew about it, and they were afraid that people were going to get all messed up by airlines that didn't really understand all the rules. They were inventing them as they went along, and it made sense to regulate. Along comes Ronald Reagan and his theorists. He had a guy named Arthur Laffer that worked for him, and he came up with an idea, and it's basically kind of a philosophy that says hands off. We do this laissez-faire. We don't get involved with actively managing the economy. We have an open economy and let the economy take its natural course. And what that led to in some cases was, for instance, the destruction of the video cassette recorder business in the United States and the destruction of the television business. We used to build most of our TV sets here in the United States in the 70s, and with laissez-faire, you had companies like Sony bringing in televisions and selling them for less than it was to make them, which drove Zenith out of business. They could not build television.
They were such
anymore.
a good company too. They're high quality,
high quality,
best customer service.
Yeah,
I was upset. When they.
But that also brought the cost of a television set down. When we bought our first color TV set when I was a little kid, it was the equivalent of $6,000 in today's dollars. Today you can buy after this this reduction, yes, these older companies were pushed out, but because of open competition, the cost of a color TV dropped to practically nothing. So
True.
it has its good sides and its bad sides. And I think when you look at a year like 2002, that's not that far away. That's within living memory of the Reagan Revolution, because that was starting in 1981 and went on until and I guess George H.W. Bush was part of that as well. He certainly followed that doctrine. And so we're talking about 20 years is really all it was, about 20 years. And it made, I think, the FCC, with all the good intentions, they said this is a good idea. It will foster innovation, just like it did with the cell phones and the all the wireless phones for the home and things like that. And I think it just backfired. I don't think anybody really understood how much impact the internet was going to have on so many different businesses. Apple Computer coming out with an iPod and then distributing all music is now, 99% of it is distributed by the internet now. That never happened in 2002.
We still buy CDs, but it's very retro to buy them.
It is, but you know what I'm saying. We never thought of that would happen, because it was not something that Apple had to spend a lot of time with lawyers to come up with. They had to agree to allow their music to be published electronically like that, and it changed the world. I think that this is I'm hoping that cool heads prevail, and that we don't see any egregious violations of people's in natural rights to do what they want to do on the internet. I know for a fact, I have many friends in this business, and I know that there are some very smart people that are watching for the first instance of someone's service being degraded because of the lack of net neutrality. And that will become a poster child for the ACLU or for whoever it is that's going to be bringing this up and banging the drum saying we need to change this. So there are lots and lots of activists and technical engineers and experts that will keep their ear to the ground and watch very carefully for any kind of reports of this activity or restrictions taking place. So we'll see it right away. It'll be probably on the cover of every newspaper above the fold saying, Comcast now restricting Netflix or something like that. I don't know what if it
will be on the front page because of Time Warner.
Time Warner, they don't run newspapers, so they don't own any newspapers. The point is, it's going to be out. It's not going to be quiet. It's not going to be quiet. There's enough people dedicated to this topic that they're going to make a huge stink about it. And that's good. That keeps it in the public mind. And, like I say, I have a lot of my friends that are not technologists. They have a little Apple TV box or a Roku. They've got it hooked to their TV set. Millions of DVD players have Netflix built into them. They're watching Netflix every night. And if that stops, it's not going to be good. You're going to get a lot of complaints. And I'm not saying that's what's going to stop, but something will happen. And I think it will be interesting to see how the industry reacts to that.
Yes, it will. Definitely will. It made me think twice. I just was talking to someone, they happened to mention it. I'm like, well, what's that? As I often do. And I was just shocked because I don't remember any news stories on it. And I do pay attention to the news. And how did I miss this?
Go ahead.
You had what?
I had a position when I was in school of maintaining a Usenet server, and the Usenet predates the World Wide Web. It was a collection of bulletin boards on topics, many thousands of different topics, science, on recreation, on arts,
was that
so forth.
1990?
It was started in the late 80s, and it's still on today. But yeah, in the early 90s to the mid 90s, before the World Wide Web.
I think I remember that. I think I remember that.
The Usenet had some news groups that were carried rather controversial subjects that would never pass muster at a university as being legitimate use of the internet. Things like neo-Nazi discussion boards, really, very unusual sexual practices, discussions, very unusual stuff. Without making any value judgments, something that probably shouldn't be on an academic network, and certainly should not be anywhere near an elementary school or where minors see them. And then they started placing pictures. They figured out how to post pictures on the Usenet, and some of the pictures were, pretty shocking. So this came up as a topic. What do we do? I was a beginning engineer, student engineer, and I was running a server that maintained this Usenet, which was distributed. The servers are all around the world. You set them up, and you receive a stream of messages from other servers around the world. And And I was told directly by the attorneys at the university, they said, whatever you do not block any of the news groups. Simply erase the messages however you feel would fit within your engineering plan for saving disk space. That's your excuse. So we would take some of the news groups that were truly unpleasant, and there are lots of them, and we'd set them so they would only retain a message for a day. Whereas other news groups like Sci.med.cancer, which would be a group that talked about cancer cures and research, we might keep those messages for 6 months. So that if you were in the medical school at the University of California, you could go in there and read a posting about a new drug trial for lung cancer. That could help potentially help a doctor that's studying cancer come up with a cure for cancer. I mean, that's how important those messages are. Having some kind of a news group that's got just filth in it, or just something that has nothing to do with academia, we could, if we edited that news group out, we would make tacit agreement and editorial approval of every other news group. And there's 30,000 news groups at that time. Today there's even more, 60, 70,000 news groups. There's no way you could read all of them. How do you do that? So I was just told, take the bulk groups that are really unpleasant, and there's really bad ones, and simply reduce their time down to a couple of days. And that way, if somebody really wants to look at that stuff or read that stuff, they can, but it's going to be very difficult to do, because
and they would have to save it to read later.
Exactly.
Copy paste,
Exactly. They have to be on it all day long, literally, and nobody would do that, of course. So that's how self-regulation worked before the net neutrality issue came up. Is that there were ways to do it within the framework of common sense. And it worked well. It was self-regulating, and I think it worked well. I'm worried now that we're going to have corporate lawyers define policy, and I have nothing against lawyers, but I don't think they're the best people to be making decisions like this.
Well, value judgments, no, I don't think so. It's the bottom line. Look at what happened on Wall Street when. What's his name? When he said that it needs to be unregulated, that the market will control itself, and Greenspan.
Greenspan.
We see what happened as a result of that. And I'm deeply concerned that not only we've had the real estate bust, the Wall Street, the derivatives, the derivatives, those are a really good example of unregulated industry gone corrupt. And there was the impending segregation, possibly, of the Internet. I mean, no wonder people think we're corrupt and evil and only care about money. And it's disturbing, at the least. Is our other caller back yet? Are you back yet, sir?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm sorry.
Well, what do you think of some of the things that Pluto had said?
with the net neutrality or the corporation. I heard some of it. I heard about laissez-faire. I think laissez-faire is actually a really good